Well, hey there, everybody. Nate Miller, your host of Retirement Rescue Radio. And let's talk about the State of the Union address. I'm here to actually debunk a lot of the tax comments that Biden made. I'm not going to talk about things that I don't know about. I'm going to talk about just the tax issues. In case you haven't noticed, if you've listened to a lot of my podcast episodes, you'll find some sprinkled in where I absolutely hate it when people talk about how the rich don't pay their fair share of taxes, because it's just not true. When you look at all of the independent actual data, none of the data supports that. None of it does. And I'm tired of them perpetuating this lie. And it is a lie. It's a lie because of what I'm about to talk to you about. So I'm going to go through every single comment that Biden made about taxes. Don't worry, it's not a lot. It's maybe 5 or 6 that he made. And we're going to go through every single one of them and talk about why it is not true. And we're going to actually use facts and reportable data to do it. So this is going to be debunking Biden's tax issues. So the first thing that he said was he claimed that in 2020, 55 of the biggest U.S. companies made $40 billion and paid $0 in federal income tax. Now, first we need to define what that $40 billion was. Was that simply revenue or was it profit? I mean, those two are often confused when comments like this are made. So they give you, for example, let's say, to give you an idea of how this is different. Let's say just hypothetically that my company, since I own a company, let's put me into this, right? I own a company, and let's say last year my revenue was $2 million, but my profit was only $200,000. And so that would mean that my company technically made $2 million, but I didn't keep $2 million. I only kept 200,000. And I wouldn't even have kept that, because then I would have paid taxes on that, right? And so what you keep is actually way more important than what you make. Everybody loves to do the addition, but they never want to do the subtraction when they start slamming the rich. But when I looked into this, I was like, okay, what is he actually talking about when he mentions that 40 billion? What number is that? Is it the revenue? Is it the profit? Well, according to PolitiFact and the Washington Post, which I've both got sourced here, it does appear to be $40 billion of what they call pre-tax income, meaning revenue minus expenses and before taxes. So basically, that is profit. So he is saying that 55 of the companies combined for about $40 billion of profit. And he said that they paid $0 in federal income taxes. And so let's pull that up here. Let's actually go through that. So what he's actually talking about, or what he is referring to, is there was a study that was released by a non-governmental group that concluded that at least 55 large companies paid $0 federal income taxes. And now Biden's term loopholes may not be appropriate, because a lot of these relevant provisions are deliberate attempts to set incentives through the tax code, and are pretty darn popular. And so some critics say that the financial disclosures that were used to compile this report are imperfect estimates of what these companies actually paid in taxes, since the accounting rules were different for the two types of filing. So you've got accounting rules, and then you've got tax rules, and the two are not always the same. And a lot of people don't realize that either. And so this was an independent study that of those 55 companies, and Biden was saying it's just not fair. It's not fair to the rest of the American taxpayers. Now, if Trump or any other conservative person said these same things about taxes, I would be coming on here having words as well. So this is not a political right-wing, left-wing conversation. This is a tax conversation. If anybody comes out saying that they're going to be increasing taxes, or they're talking incorrectly about how taxes work, I'm going to have words with them, because I understand the taxes. And I don't think they are. I think probably what Biden might be doing is he might be confusing someone's marginal tax rate with their effective tax rate. More on that here in a little bit. And so this study showed that. And this PolitiFact, I believe it is, says that they found that Biden's statement might have been supported by a recently released study from that, and it was a liberal group through which the study's methodology came from. And so this liberal group, it is, the liberal leaning Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. And so right there, it's going to lean more towards what Biden is saying anyway. And the study has received wide media coverage. And it found that at least 55 of the largest companies in America paid no federal corporate income taxes in their most recent fiscal year, despite enjoying substantial profits in the US. And the list of 55 companies is sprinkled with some pretty well-known names. We got FedEx in there, HP, Nike, Salesforce, Xcel Energy, so some pretty big names and stuff that we all use their products. And so I'm pretty sure we're not going to be wanting those companies to go away anytime soon. We love their products. We love their services. We're going to keep using them. So they're not evil corporations. They're providing things that we use, that we wear, that we use to order the things that we wear, right? And the study revealed that there were several tax laws that helped protect those companies' income from taxation, including those governing the tax treatment of executive stock options, research and experimentation, which means expenses. The expenses that the corporation is incurring, renewable energy, deductions for capital expenses, again, deductions for expenses, and the reallocation of losses to different tax years, because corporations can have losses show up in different years. So let's say that somebody is pouring a lot of money into research and development or marketing and all kinds of different expenses to incur. And so that in some years, they might not have any reportable income because they've been spending so much. Well, they might have even been spending so much that they spent more than they earned because they were getting loans and stuff like that to cover the gaps. And so they might be, carrying some of those losses forward to previous years. And then finally, when they do have a possible big profit, then they can carry some of those losses from what they had spent in all those previous years and bring them forward. So there's so many things that they can do to lower their tax liability legally, that I don't have a problem with this. I don't have a problem with this at all. And so here's another thing. So there's a guy, Garrett Watson, he's a senior policy analyst for the Tax Foundation, has agreed with certain, the problem. He agrees with the problem of how Biden is framing this. The problem with this framing is that many of the provisions that are reducing the tax rates are either built into the code to properly calculate net income, like 100% bonus depreciation, which is a pro-growth provision, or there's provisions created to incentivize preferred activity by policymakers, such as like the research and experimentation tax credit. So they're taking advantage of things that are legal for them to take advantage of. And the group study is based on an analysis of annual financial reports. This is another issue. So it was based on financial reports that were filed by publicly traded companies in the S&P 500 stock index, or the Fortune 500 list of, large companies with the largest revenue in America. But while this data comes from federally required disclosures, what is disclosed on the forms is actually calculated different for these companies' actual tax filings, which are private. And so in other words, we don't really know whether these companies actually paid zero tax. They are just inferring them based off of financial reportings that actually are different than how taxes are reported, which again, accounting and taxes are different, way different. And so notably, companies have some flexibility to determine their own fiscal years for financial disclosures, whereas the IRS requires more rigid schedule for tax payments. So financial reports may not cover the same period of time as the tax return either. And so meanwhile, the tax code allows company to smooth out income by allowing losses to be carried forward or backward, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, for a number of years. And so as a result, a snapshot of the company in a single year of profitability is not necessarily correct. It could be a little bit distorted, but that some tax credits tend to highlight quite often. So that's it. It's not even the same reporting that was used for the accounting and for the actual taxes. So that's one of the issues there. But so that being said, maybe they didn't. Maybe they didn't pay any tax, any federal income tax. So he literally says federal income tax. That's the only one that he's talking about. And it's a little dubious on whether or not that's correct, but chances are, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. This one could be somewhat true. We'll put it that way. It could be somewhat true, but you got to go through a lot of hoops in order to figure that out. And there's no way to 100% figure that out based on any of the reports or studies or articles that he's using. So in other words, I would say that's a little disingenuous because he cannot irrefutably say that at all. So that's issue number one, and that was the first thing that he said. And honestly, I think that first thing that he said, when I said that it could possibly be true, we just don't know. That's the only one. That's the only one that I feel even has a remote chance of being true. Every single one of them can easily be shown as a lie. And the first one, he said that he passed a law making corporations pay at least 15%, and that's still less than what the working people pay in federal taxes. And that's why he wants to raise it to 21% so that big companies finally pay their fair share. That was what he said. So here's the problem with that. The average effective tax rate paid in 2020 among all taxpayers, according to taxfoundation.org, was 13.6%. Let me say that again. The average tax rate across all taxpayers was only 13.6%. Well, Nate, how is that? Because we have a 10% tax bracket, a 12%, a 22%, a 24%. So we all the way up to 37. We've got tax rates that go all the way up to 37. 37% is the highest tax rate. And millionaires or billionaires are making enough money to where they should be paying that highest tax rate of 37%. Well, how come their effective rate isn't 37%? Well, this is the average rate of everybody blended together, right? But let's go a little bit deeper with all the reportings that taxfoundation.org does. And what's interesting, a lot of these tax issues or tax comments that Biden made, most of them I was able to debunk from one source, taxfoundation.org. One source. All they do is report. They report the numbers, and then they show the numbers in different percentages and quintiles and all that. That's all they do. And so this just takes the raw numbers and says, what's the result? Who's paying taxes? How much are they paying on average, right? So while the average effective tax rate for all taxpayers was only 13.6, the 1% of taxpayers, which would include the evil billionaires, they paid an average rate of 25.99%, more than 8 times higher than the 3.1% average that is paid by the bottom half of the taxpayers. So when he says that it's still less than what the working people pay, who are the working people? Well, based on their income levels, they would fall into that bottom 50% of income earners. And the top 1% is paying more than 8 times the tax rates that the normal person is paying. So that one's not true at all. He also claimed that there are 1,000 billionaires in America, that paid an average of 8.2% income tax, which he said is far less than the vast majority of Americans pay. And I think I basically already just debunked that with the last question, but let's keep going. The top 50% of all taxpayers pay 97.7% of all federal income taxes. And where do the top 50% fall in income? Well, let's look at that here. Top 50%, average tax rate, 14.8. Yes, share, income, share. Yeah, 97.7%. Sorry, yeah. So they pay 97.7%. The bottom 50% only pay 2.3% of all tax that's collected in America. 2.3% of it. So the top 50% pays 97.7, including the evil billionaires. The bottom 50% only pay 2.3%. And again, the average effective rate of the bottom 50% was 3.1, not 8.2, not even 15, 3.1% is the average effective rate. Now, when I think that Biden is getting the marginal tax rate mixed up with the effective tax rate, here's what that means. Marginal tax rate is just what tax bracket did your last dollar fall into? That's it. That's what a marginal tax rate is. And so, for example, let's say if you are a married couple and you combined have taxable income of $100,000 per year, you're going to be in the 22% tax bracket. But some of your income is going to be taxed at 10%, some's taxed at 12%, and some of your income is not taxed at all because of any deductions or credits that you might have. And so what that means is if somebody has $100,000 of taxable income, They might be in the 22% tax bracket, but their overall tax liability that they really paid might have only been 5 or 6%. So let's just say 5%. So that means they paid $5,000 on that $100,000 of taxable income. So their effective rate is 5% when their marginal rate was 22. I hope that makes sense, because it makes complete sense to me, but I know how to do taxes. And so there's the problem. Now, average effective tax rate for the bottom 50% was 3.1%, not 8.2, like he tried saying. That he said that was more than what the vast majority of them, or less. He said that was far less than what the vast majority of Americans pay. And the vast majority would be 50% or more. And so if the bottom 50% only pays an effective rate of 3.1%, where is he getting the 8.2? Where's he getting the higher than 8.2? I don't know. So there's the problem. Average tax rate of the top 50% was 14.8%. The bottom was 3.1. So that means the top 50% pays almost 5 times the tax rate of the bottom 50%. But the top 1%, which would include the evil billionaires, they're the ones that pay the 8 times the tax rate that the bottom 50% pay. So again, where's Biden getting these numbers? I don't know. So that one, completely debunked. Number 4, the working people pay more Social Security taxes than millionaires and billionaires. I don't even understand how anybody that can do math can even remotely entertain that comment. Of those millionaires and billionaires that actually do receive a wage from their business, they're paying Social Security and Medicare taxes on those wages too. And the average wage in America, according to Forbes, which is sourced here, $59,428. Well, right now, the Social Security income wage cap is set at $168,600, meaning that if you earn more than $168,600, you won't pay any Social Security tax on anything above that. But you're still paying Social Security tax on $168,600, not the $59,428. So at 6.2%, which is what employees pay for Social Security tax, then the person that made over $168,000, meaning millionaires and billionaires can be lumped into that, they're going to pay $10,453.20 per year on their Social Security tax, while the average income of $59,428 is going to pay $3,684.54 per year, $3,684.54. So again, I don't know where that's coming from. And not only that, let's take that a step further, because a lot of these millionaires and billionaires got that way because they own very successful companies, meaning they are employers. What do employers do? They pay both halves of the Social Security taxes, not just for themselves, but for every single employee. And so what that means, now, each employee covers 6.2% of that. So each employer covers the other 6.2% for every single employee. So I'll give you an example. I am an employer. Let's say that I've got $500,000 of employee salaries that I have to pay annually. And for easy math, let's just say I have 5 employees, and let's say each of those employees is earning $100,000. The employee's share of Social Security tax is 6.2%, but the total Social Security tax that needs to be paid is 12.4%. So each employee pays 6.2% of their $100,000. So they pay $6,200 in Social Security tax for that year, but I pay $6,200 times 5 employees. So I'm paying $31,000 in Social Security tax, whereas each of my own employees is only paying $6,200. So now imagine all these big companies who employ hundreds and thousands of employees and just extrapolate that math out. So how can he stand up there and say that the working people pay more Social Security taxes than millionaires and billionaires? He can't. At least he can't. He can't truthfully. He can't say it truthfully. I'm sorry. Now, the last one that I have here is he says that Republicans want to cut Social Security. Now, this one might not necessarily be a tax comment on the surface, but whatever happens to Social Security will affect the amount of tax that we might have to pay or sorry, if we're receiving benefits, so the amount of income tax we might have to pay on the benefits that we receive, or the amount of tax that we will have to pay into the system if we're currently still working. All right. So we're going to talk about that because it is going to affect taxes on the front end, the back end, you name it. Right. And so here we're going to go to another PolitiFact article. And here's the thing. If your time is short, here's a few bullet points. So this is a House Republican Study Committee proposal that it does support cuts to the beneficiaries by setting a higher retirement age and changing some benefit formulas. And so that 13% that Biden does talk about how they want to cut Social Security by about 13%. It's speculative, but it is plausible. And this is here's the problem. It's not Republicans. He can't blanketly say that. This is actually one Republican faction's plan, not something that is universally adopted by the entire GOP, and is not even certain that it's going to be enacted. But also his framing ignores his own policy, which is essentially just continuing the status quo, which will threaten even bigger reductions by the early 2030s, and some reports of like 28%. And so that's the problem. He said their plan will cut Social Security benefits, but the Social Security, and here's how Social Security works. We know that it's funded through payroll tax, and that revenue is put into trust funds to pay for current beneficiaries. Those trust funds could be depleted as early as 2032 if further action's not taken, and that could mean that in about a decade, monthly checks could be reduced, according to this PolitiFact article, by about 23%. So 23% as opposed to 13%. So the Republicans are wanting to make some changes that would actually improve our situation. It would go from a 23% reduction to a 13% reduction. So it's improving the situation. It's not cutting benefits for seniors. As a matter of fact, if you actually read this proposal, the proposal opens the door to Social Security cuts, but its effects are far less clear or specific than what Biden portrayed. Republicans said it would not affect people who are near retirement or have already retired, which Biden left that out. He also omitted important context about what could happen to Social Security under his own plan, and that would be reducing all of those benefits by 23%, not 13%. And so the group said it would only make modest changes in the benefit formula for individuals who are not near retirement. So what they're talking about is making these changes for younger people, which pretty much I support, because a lot of people are in that position anyway. They think something does need to be done to it. They don't want to mess with those that are receiving it or those that can receive it here pretty quickly. They want to make those changes for those of us that are younger. I mean, I'm not even 45 yet. And so I would say I've got it, 17 years before I would even be able to first start claiming Social Security. And I would have no problem if they moved that 62 to like 65, or if they moved the 67 that I currently would qualify for full retirement benefits, if they moved that up to 68, 69, or even 70, and then said that the maximum is now set at 72 or 75, whatever those are, I would be in favor of that. We're living a lot longer now. I'd be fine with that. And so here they are, giving proposals to improve the situation and shore up the reserves. And Biden is saying that they're wanting to cut Social Security. So it'll make modest changes in the benefit formula for individuals who are not near retirement and on the income scale's higher end. So this is Republicans saying that's even going to reduce some of the benefits for some of those that are making more money, which is normally a left-wing deal. So it also says it would make modest adjustments to the retirement age for the full benefits to account for increases in life expectancy. And the budget said it would phase out auxiliary benefits for higher earners. And so, and the group's pledge is that younger Americans would see reductions under the group's plan, not those that are currently receiving or could receive here within the next few years. And so it is one proposal from one faction of Republicans. Let's see. And in contrast to the changes the Republican Study Committee envisions, the White House in February said Biden would commit to taking cuts to Social Security off the table. So a status quo approach like that would lead to significant benefit cuts if nothing changes. So again, Biden's approach of let's not really do anything is going to have bigger changes than what the Republican bill is wanting to say or wanting to do. So that's the problem. Let's see here. Let's go a little bit further. Yep. So that's just it. I'm going to rate that one mostly false. Also, and that's pretty much it. So my conclusion here is this. Even if a company doesn't pay any federal income tax, I am completely okay with that. I'm okay with that because I understand how companies work. They could be plowing so much more money back into expanding and growing their business that they can't really take any of that actual profit, and they would take some of it they would have made, and they're going to use that to grow the business, hire more people, create better products that we all enjoy. They're going to do that instead. And I also understand that the person and the company are separate. Warren Buffett might be a billionaire and worth several billions of dollars, several tens of billions of dollars, but the worth of his companies is not what he is personally making on an annual basis. It's just how much his companies are worth. Using my hypothetical numbers from before, my company might have made $2 million in revenue, but again, that's not what I kept. And the same is true with billionaires as well. The numbers are just a lot bigger than mine. And I would actually prefer if all corporations, the actual corporations, paid zero income tax, and then all of us are just only taxed on an individual basis, that it would just flow through. Because the money these corporations make are actually being taxed twice. The companies are paying Social Security tax, Medicare tax, unemployment tax, property tax, and then finally, if they have anything left over, any profit after that, they're going to pay tax on that profit they have left over. And then when the owners receive money from those companies as individuals, they pay tax on that income again as well. It's double taxation. That's how corporate taxation works. So in conclusion, the millionaires, the billionaires, the rich, not only do they pay their fair share of taxes, they're pretty much paying everyone else's fair share too. Stop it. Stop continuing to say the rich don't pay their fair share in taxes. It's a lie. You need to do better.